Hi, I'm Jillian, and you are listening to The Mindset of Podcasting, where we not only talk about the technical side of launching and managing your podcast, but also about building your confidence in yourself and the power of your voice. Your business and your podcast depends so much on your mindset. So I will be diving deep into the mindset blocks and issues that we go through when starting and running your own podcast so you can feel confident in your message and in your voice. It's time to listen in and feel confident about yourself and your podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Mindset of Podcasting. I'm so glad you're here listening today because I am answering all the podcast questions. Well, not all of them, but I'm answering the most common ones that I get. I get a lot of questions asked over and over again, so I wanted to put them all in one episode so you can hear the answers to the most common questions because I'm sure you have had some of the same questions. So let's get into it. So do you need to edit every episode of your podcast? Technically, no. No, you don't need to edit it at all if you don't want to. But if it doesn't have good audio quality, then people probably won't listen because it needs to sound good. If there's background noise, if the audio is just staticky or echoey, people are not going to want to listen to that. So if you don't want to edit your episodes, take precautions before you record so that your audio sounds good. So make sure you use a microphone, you have a small room or a carpeted room. A lot of people record in their closets, but just make sure you have a room where the sound isn't bouncing off. Definitely not a big open room or one with hardwood floors. If you want, test your audio before you record. Wherever you're going to be recording it, do a test and see how it sounds. You can practice not saying or like a lot. Some people don't really care if they're in their podcast episodes, but if you say like every other word, it starts to get really annoying. So just kind of practice not saying that so much because if it's hard to listen to, then people are not going to listen to it. So if you don't want to edit to begin with, just make sure you're taking all those precautions beforehand so that the audio sounds good. Okay, this is probably the most common question I get like all the time. What equipment do I need? So people think that they need all this fancy equipment to start a podcast. You don't. First, you can always upgrade later. Start with what you have and upgrade it later. What you need to begin is a microphone, headphones, and a computer. And that is all. Those are the 3 things you need to start. And you don't have to get super fancy. Go on Amazon, read the reviews. They don't have to be super fancy. If you would like some suggestions, I do have a free launch guide that I offer. I will put those links in the show notes. So you can go get my free launch guide that has all the equipment and a timeline for your launch and all the things to start launching. But yes, those are the only 3 pieces of equipment you need to start off with. So where should I host my podcast? So you have a podcast, you've recorded episodes, and now you just have these audio files. Where do you put them? So there are a few different podcast hosts that you can use depending on your needs, your budget, and what you're looking for. So I am going to let you know about the ones that I have experience with because there are a lot of podcast hosts and I cannot go through all of them, but the ones that I have experience with and that I have used. There is Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is all about making it easy for you, the user. They have a very simple design. It's easy to use, easy analytics to understand. The free plan does delete your files after 90 days. So I don't advise using the free plan, especially if you want to have a podcast long term. But it's not really that expensive. $12 for 3 hours a month or $18 for 6 hours a month. But Buzzsprout is super easy to use. If you don't want to get into all the overcomplicated things, I suggest starting there. There's also Libsyn. This is the biggest name for podcast hosts, and it focuses more on measuring the success of your podcast. So it has a lot of advanced analytics into every episode. It's a little more complicated to use than other platforms, but there are a lot of videos you can look at to see all the features that they have. I mean, they do give you a ton of extra features like a page on Libsyn, a customized podcast player, more distribution opportunities, and you can also publish video files. They don't have a free plan. Usually people get the $15 a month plan, which allows you to publish weekly episodes. So Libsyn is a good place to start if you know that this is going to be a business for you. Like your podcast is, you want to grow it into a big business that has ads and sponsors and things, and Libsyn is definitely where you are going to want to start. Next one is Anchor. This is the only 100% free platform. And it gets a bad rap. If you've heard anything about Anchor, I'm sure you've heard a few bad things about it. But my clients use it. I have a few clients who do use it, and we have never had an issue with it. It got a bad rap because when Anchor first started, they were putting ads into your episodes without your permission, and that was part of their terms of use. They do not do that anymore. So do not worry. They do not do that anymore. But I think that's why people don't trust them, because they're afraid that they're going to start putting ads in again or using your content however they want. But my clients on there, and there's been no issues, knock on wood. The editor on Anchor is not very good, so I wouldn't suggest using that at all. They do have an editing software you can use, but it's not good at all. And their customer service isn't very quick to respond. So if you have any issues, it does take them a little while to respond back to you. But I like Anchor because it is super easy to distribute your episodes to other platforms. It's very easy to use. It walks you through the entire setup process. You can get copyright-free music, and it will add it to your intro and outro right in Anchor for you, so you don't have to get all technical trying to do that. So if you are starting out and you don't have a big budget for this, Anchor is a great place to start. And I want to say, starting with Anchor is great because if you eventually do want to grow it and move over to any of the other platforms, you can transfer your podcast to another platform later on. So if you're just starting out, I really suggest Anchor. Super easy to use. And yeah, never had an issue with my clients. So the last one I'm going to talk about is Castros. I host my podcast on Castros. And the reason I chose it was because you can have as many podcasts as you want on it, including private podcasts. Now, I host my podcast course, the Podcast Launch Protocol, on Castros as a private podcast. So I love that I was able to pay $19 a month, and I can have as many podcasts and as many episodes as I want for $19 a month. So if you want to have multiple shows, or if you want to do some private podcast as like a course, then Castros is great for that. If you use WordPress, they have a plugin which connects your podcast right to your WordPress site. So that's really great. And for an extra fee, they also offer transcription services and professional editing. So I love Castros. Haven't had an issue with that either. So those are the 4 that I have used and I know about. So any questions on those, I know that was a little complicated, reach out to me and I will help guide you on what podcast host you should use or is best for you. I hate the word should, so what's best for you? Another question that I get a lot is, how do I make money with my podcast? So starting out, you're going to want to lead your listeners to your courses, programs, or coaching. It's going to take a little bit to be able to get sponsors. You have to have so many downloads, and that depends on the sponsor. It's not like a set number. So to begin with, I want to give you ways to make money when you're first starting your podcast and you don't have a huge download numbers. So leading them to your course, programs, or coaching. So definitely put a call to action in every podcast episode that leads to something of yours. You can create ads for your affiliate links. For example, I have an affiliate link for Dubsado. So I created an ad all about Dubsado and I put it in the middle of my podcast episodes. Next, you could ask friends to do ads for you. I have a client who has her friends record ads for her and she charges like $25 and she puts them in her podcast episodes. Another way to make some money is to do a Patreon account. You can offer extra episodes, merch, PDF, or just a bonus for them for joining your membership. So Patreon is a membership site. Apple Podcast also has a membership site, so you can check into that too. I know Patreon was a little less on fees and stuff. So you can create a membership site on those, and the prices vary. You can do like $5 a month or $10 a month for your members and just offer them extra stuff. I know some podcasters do buy me a coffee. They say, if you like this podcast, I would so appreciate it if you would buy me a coffee to help support this podcast. So you can ask your listeners to do that, set that up on their site. Another question that I get is, what is the best length for an episode? So this really depends on your audience and the topic that you're talking about. But typically for a solo episode, it's about 20 to 30 minutes, and for guests, about 30 to 45 minutes. people often think that they don't have time to listen to like longer episodes, so they just don't download them. And I'm guilty of that too. If I see like an hour-long episode, I'm like, I don't really have time to listen to that, so I just won't download it. So that's where my thinking comes in, is like, I like my episodes to be long enough for maybe a drive or a walk, so not too long. But make sure that you are giving value and not just trying to be super quick. So should you have guest or solo episodes? This is entirely up to you. I do both, as I enjoy talking to people. Plus, then my guests can help me promote my podcast when they're on them. So I send them the graphics and ask them to help promote it. So really up to you and the topics you're talking about and how you want to do your podcast. And the last question I get is, how do I know it's time to hire a podcast manager? Well, are you overwhelmed and can't keep up with your podcast? That is definitely a good time to hire one. Some people are a little afraid about the money, but you have to decide, is your time worth the money that you're going to pay somebody to do it? If you're going to get more time back to work on other things in your business, then it's definitely worth the money, I think. So you know that you're ready when you just can't keep up with everything else because you're so busy doing all the behind the scenes of your podcast. So those are the most common questions that I get asked. If you have any other questions, please reach out to me. You can reach me on Instagram at Jillian Grover Podcasting or email me, Jillian@JillianGrover.com. And I'm going to move on to my next little segment just to give you a little update on me and a few things. So my podcast tip of the week. Promote your podcast more than just once or more than just on the day it comes out. Make posts for the whole week. Talk about it in your stories all week. Relate other posts back to an old episode or something. You have to talk about your podcast to get it out there. So keep talking about it. It might seem like you're saying the same thing over and over again. You're like, people are going to get so tired of hearing this. But people don't always hear it the first time. People take usually 7 to 10 times of hearing something before they actually register it. So keep talking about it. So what's going on in my business? So I hired a podcast manager. Her name is Danielle. Hi, Danielle. I wanted to focus more on the content of my podcast and work on growing my podcast. And I couldn't do that when I was still editing it and managing all the things that I have to manage with it. So I needed to give some of that away. So I actually had extra time. So I am so glad I hired her, and it's given me so much time back to work on actually growing the podcast and my business. So what's going on in my life? Well, we are hopefully moving. It's not official yet, but the plan is to move, and we are downgrading a lot. So currently we live in a 2,500 square foot, 5-bedroom, 3 full bath house. And we are moving to a 3-bedroom, 1-bath apartment that's 1,200 square feet. So it is a big downgrade. I can't really get into the reason why we're doing it yet because it's not official or anything yet. Should be official soon because I'm pretty sure it will go through, but still waiting to hear. But yeah, so right now I am in the process of decluttering my house and getting it ready to put on the market. So a lot of work. So after my work day with podcast managing, I am just working on my house, and that is what we have been doing. So that is what's going on with me. I would love to hear what's going on with you guys. Reach out to me. All the links for everything will be in the show notes. And thank you so much for listening. If you have any other questions, reach out. I'm always available, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Your support means the world to me. Do you want to create a podcast on your own, but you're not sure where to start? My free podcast launch guide will give you all the information you need to start your podcast. From timelines to equipment, I got you covered. Head over to themindsetofpodcasting.com, and on the right-hand side, you'll see a box to sign up to get your free copy of the podcast launch guide. You can start your podcast on your own, but it's always great to have a little help along the way. That's why I created this guide. Go to themindsetofpodcasting.com and get your copy today.